Dear friends, I welcome you to my channel. I am Taras Berezovets. Today we will discuss how cracks are appearing in the foundation of NATO and the European Union. Two countries that have not hidden their pro-Russian sentiments in principle. It is, of course, about Slovakia and Hungary. They have taken a number of steps that have caused a scandal, both in their own countries where they are criticized for this. Their own opposition criticizes them, in fact, and it shows the powerlessness of European structures. I remind you that Hungary is currently presiding over the European Union, and all of this is happening against the backdrop of the transfer of North Korean troops to Russian territory. This has already been confirmed today by U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken. He mentions the figure of 8,000 Russians. Moreover, there are signs of the North Korean military forming its own command on the territory of Russia. At least three North Korean generals have already arrived in Russia and are preparing to take command of their own North Korean contingent. This is already a completely different story. This is no longer a false flag operation, meaning it is not an operation under a foreign flag and not a disguise. In the form of the Russian army, this is already the establishment of a full-fledged local command. That is, they have already crawled in. First, transferring the formation. At least 500 officers have already been transferred, along with 8,000 enlisted personnel. Now, 3 generals have arrived in the territory of the Russian Federation. Among them is a trusted associate of the dictator Kim Jong-un. And this could mean something more. I will repeat, this is already direct involvement in North Korea. In the context of the war, as there are signs of the formation of their own command, how do our Western allies respond? So far, they only state the facts and express deep concern. Meanwhile, as we can see, Putin's friends and accomplices are working quite effectively, it must be acknowledged, helping him, not to mention the fifth column that operates within the territories of the European Union. And this is also a disgrace, and not just a disgrace, it is a real threat to European security. Friends, we will talk more about all this later. But let's start with another piece of news. So, today, the Russian publications Novaya Gazeta Europe and Media report that a unit of the Ukrainian territorial defense is operating in the Kursk region. They also talk about the YouTube channel of TRO Media, where they release an interview with civilians from the Kursk region is part of the project Unnecessary for Putin, which has already produced several dozen videos, specifically at least 35 clips featuring civilians from the occupied territories of the Kursk region. This investigation is a major piece by the publication Novaya Gazeta Europe, which discusses Ukrainian military representatives from the Kursk commandant's office who perform an important humanitarian function. Primarily, they locate local citizens of the Russian Federation and inform their relatives in other Russian regions that they are safe. There is a whole queue forming for Ukrainian press officers to report that they are okay. At the same time, the journalists themselves express concerns that the residents of the Kursk region, who spoke quite openly with the representative of the Ukrainian military commandant's office and revealed the true nature of the current criminal Kremlin regime, feel abandoned by the Russian authorities who are not attempting to save or evacuate them. It is reported that entire settlements in the Kursk region are being wiped off the face of the earth, with several villages completely destroyed. This is all a result of the fact that for the Kremlin it does not matter whom to eliminate. Peaceful Ukrainian citizens, or even their own. However, they no longer consider them their own. Probably they are seen as traitors now. And most likely, when sooner or later these territories of the Kursk region return to Russian authority and the Russian army, all the residents who were there will be waiting. It is quite possible that there will be a modern equivalent of the Gulag. At the very least, all of them will be interrogated by the FSB, go through filtration camps, and they will be beaten, tortured, and forced to provide information by any means necessary. In any case, they and their children will be labeled as enemies of the people, which is exactly what the Stalinist regime did after the return to territories that had been occupied by the Wehrmacht. All these people were declared enemies of the people. They were branded with an eternal mark, And there was a section, I think the viewers of the channel remember, when filling out an autobiography, asking whether you or your relatives lived in occupied territories. If a person answered yes, it served as a reason for additional. The checks by the USSR State Security Committee effectively put a cross on that person. It was not possible to become a member of the Communist Party, nor was it possible to receive a promotion. A higher position could often lead to forgetting about obtaining higher education. Such people became boys for the rest of their lives, and there is practically no doubt that the current Russian government is not only the heir to Stalin's executioners, but has in many ways even surpassed them, however strange it may seem, in the 21st century. In short, this is substantial material that has been published. The publication Novaya Gazeta Europe, as is known, is released in the territory of the European Union, and this material is titled I Am Still Alive. People live under Russian bombs and send video messages to their relatives. It should be noted that journalists from Novaya Gazeta Europe communicated quite objectively, surprisingly, and they, in particular, without hiding, will write about the fact that it was precisely the Russian aviation that completely destroyed the villages of Sverdlikovo and Lebedevka, dropping dozens of aerial bombs on them. That is, there is not even a question here that it was all done by the Russian army, which is already, agree, surprising in itself. But we are used to the fact that any Russian press, whether it is the propagandist or so-called liberal, tries to adhere to its own only incomprehensible so-called standards, which actually do not exist. Well, here the result is rather the opposite, and that's why I say that I am surprised. Well, let's move on. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, at a joint press conference with Pentagon Chief Lloyd Austin, reported that there are already about 8,000 North Korean military personnel in the Kursk region. These troops are not currently engaged in battles against Ukrainian forces, Blinken stated, but we expect this to happen in the coming days. What are the Russian military teaching their North Korean mercenaries? Blinken states that, according to American intelligence, they are primarily training them in working with drones. The use of artillery on the ground is the main combat action of the infantry, including Russian infantry, which indicates, I quote, that they intend, referring to the Russians, to use these North Korean troops in operations on the front line. Zelensky previously stated that 3,000 North Korean soldiers are in a training camp, and it is expected that their number will increase to 12. According to Pentagon spokesperson Sabrina Singh, North Korea has sent $10,000 of its soldiers to Russia, who have moved closer to the border with Ukraine. I also reported in detail yesterday that North Korea will pay Putin $2,000 per month for each mercenary's head. At the same time, each North Korean soldier will receive from 5 to 10% of this amount, that is, from $100 to $200, will go to the dictator Kim Jong-un's bottomless pockets. It is clear why he sends them there. He simply profits from them. Additionally, besides gaining combat experience, those North Korean soldiers who remain alive and relatively healthy will be able to avoid serious injury. They will have to return and share this invaluable experience of modern warfare with other North Korean military personnel. And naturally, all of this is done in the context of preparing for key war against enemies. The enemies are primarily South Korea and Japan. There are signs of the formation of North Korean command on the territory of the Russian Federation, which completely changes the situation. This is entirely for your understanding. This is a radical change. Among several thousand North Korean soldiers, there are at least 500 officers of the North Korean army, and now 3 generals have arrived, one of whom is the right-hand man of dictator Kim Jong-un. This indicates that a command structure is being formed in the full sense for the North Korean grouping, which is deployed on the territory of the Russian Federation, but there are signs that it may be further engaged for use on the territory of Ukraine. So, The permanent representative of Ukraine to the United Nations, Serhiy Kyslytsya, is a very well-known, talented diplomat, very tough, and I remember him from when he was just starting his diplomatic career in the USA. He stated, well, naturally, this is information he received from competent Ukrainian authorities that 3 North Korean military leaders are already on the territory of the Russian Federation. Attention! This is the chief of the main operational directorate, Major General Sin Kum-chol, the chief of the intelligence directorate Ri Chang-ho, and the deputy chief of special operations, Colonel General Kim Yong-bok. It is the last general colonel of the special forces who is the personal emissary of dictator Kim Jong-un. According to the data presented, Sergei Kyslytsya stated that North Korea has sent 12,000 military personnel to Russia, including at least 500 officers from the North Korean army. All of them are undergoing training at 5 ranges of the Eastern Military District of the Russian Federation, which means it is the Far East. Subsequently, it is planned to form at least 5 motorized rifle regiments, each consisting of 2,000 to 3,000 personnel. This means that these are already quite substantial combat units. From October 23 to 28, there is all the data indicating how well the Ukrainian intelligence, AD, and the main intelligence directorate are working, as well as the intelligence of the allies. In other words, there is already a complete breakdown. Everything is available. From October 23 to 28, 7 aircraft were transported from the Eastern Military District. 2,100 North Korean soldiers are being deployed to the Russian border with Ukraine, and such information is even being published online during the meetings of the Young Nations Organization. According to Kyslytsya, the DPRK servicemen are receiving Russian military identification and uniforms, meaning they are being dressed like Russian soldiers for the purpose of camouflage. They are being formed together with representatives of ethnic minorities from the Asian part of Russia. In particular, as mentioned about 10 days ago, a so-called Special Buryat Battalion is being formed, but it is no longer a battalion. It seems it will be a whole regiment as part of the 11th Separate Airborne Assault Brigade. Well, that means it will no longer be just a brigade. It will be a whole unit. A full-fledged regiment composed of North Korean mercenaries will be supplemented by representatives of other nationalities, in this case Buryats, and they are part of the airborne forces of the Russian Federation. In November, as stated by Kyslytsya, North Korean units are expected to begin taking unspecified direct action against the USA. General Kim Yong-bok is on the territory of the Russian Federation as a trusted representative of dictator Kim Jong-un. He led the Storm Corps of the Korean People's Army and later commanded the special forces of the DPRK Army. He is engaged in solving administrative tasks related to the deployment of the contingent. And another general who arrived in Russia, Ri Chang-ho, had previously been accused, the leadership of South Korea, in financing and developing nuclear weapons and organizing large-scale cyber attacks aimed at stealing technology and foreign currency. He has also been repeatedly seen as part of the delegation accompanying dictator Kim Jong-un. Finally, the direct command of the North Korean units will be taken over by Major General Sin Hong-chol after the 2 other mentioned generals return to North Korea, but that does not mean there won't be others from North Korea, but at least 500 officers for an 8,000 contingent. This indicates at least that they will not only have their own company commanders and battalion commanders, they will have their own headquarters deployed. Therefore, I say again, we can talk about the full formation of North Korea. The command is thus a clear indication that North Korea is entering the war on the side of the Russian Federation. Not just as mercenaries, there are enough examples in principle, meaning that the fact that Russia pays them and they are not mercenaries does not negate the fact that North Korea is already becoming a participant in the war, a third participant directly. I will repeat once again, for example, unlike Iran, it is limited to supplying Russia with weapons, ballistic missiles, and drones. They have not provided their military personnel. North Korean military personnel have already been spotted in occupied territories, with 6 being destroyed as a result of a strike in Donbass. There were also reports that they might be located in the territory of occupied Crimea. But in any case, this is a very serious change in the nature of the war. At the same time, Russia and North Korea have a treaty on strategic partnership. In particular, the 4th article of this treaty provides for military assistance to one of the parties in the event of war. Thus, North Korea, under the leadership of Kim Jong-un, essentially becomes a de jure and de facto participant in the war, and they silently do not mention it, but they are essentially fulfilling the 4th point of the agreements, which was signed in June 2024 during Putin's visit to North Korea. How do our allies, the USA, react to all of this? It is noted that, in particular, the U.S. Deputy Ambassador to the UN, Robert Wood, addressed, as he said with full respect, to his Russian colleague Nebenzia, asking whether Russia claims that there are no North Korean troops in Russia. A true Russian diplomat has arrived. He simply ignored the question, meaning he did not respond to it at all. Well, to put it simply, this whole story indicates that North Korea, as an ally of Russia, is being drawn into the war. And Ukraine has the right to expect that we have our allies. They are not planning to participate in the war. At the very least, they should increase the volume of military aid. In principle, they have talked about this, or at least start shooting down the missiles and drones that are flying towards our European neighbors. In particular, Russian missiles fell on the territory of Poland, while drones entered the territory of Romania. In this regard, a group of American congressmen from both parties, meaning bipartisan support from both Republicans and Democrats, has sent a letter to Joe Biden requesting permission for Poland to intercept and neutralize missiles flying over Ukrainian territory, especially those that may threaten Polish airspace. This is reported by the American online publication The Hill, citing the text of the letter in its possession. The request from Poland for the possibility of intercepting and destroying missiles over Ukraine is an urgent necessary measure to support Ukraine and protect NATO borders, the American congressman note. Earlier, the Minister of Poland, Radoslaw Sikorski, stated that an American missile defense base will open in Poland in the coming weeks. It will intercept not only Iranian missiles, look at how they are preparing. Iranian missiles can fly through Europe towards the USA, and preparations are already being made for this, but also Russian missiles flying towards Poland or other European allies. Well, for now, this is the official position of Poland. That is, there are different members of the cabinets. Currently, Minister of National Defense Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz stated that in the summer, he spoke about how Poland will not shoot down Russian missiles on Ukrainian territory without coordination with the other NATO members. Here is the Minister of National Defense, Sikorski. They hold a more radical extermination position. Well, that's Poland. And in Europe, there are countries like Slovakia and Hungary. Well, with Hungary, everything is clear. Everything there is so obvious and calculated, everything is so disgusting, that Hungary's Foreign Minister Peter Szijjártó came to Minsk. Moreover, he met with Sergei Lavrov. He also greeted him in Russian. Lukashenko stated, in particular, that it is a great honor for him to return to Minsk. Imagine. It is a great honor to return to Minsk to a dictator, a self-proclaimed president who has drowned peaceful protests of his own citizens in blood. Meanwhile, in Hungary, this is all approved, and most of all, Hungary approves the supplies through the Druzhba pipeline, which go through Belarus to Ukraine, Hungary, and Slovakia. And now the supplies are no longer going through Lukoil, which has come under sanctions, but through the Hungarian company Molbebut. This company, this is essentially money. This is all that interests Viktor Orban and his cabinet today. Ministers. What are European values? If Orban traveled to Tbilisi and supported the pro-Moscow party, Georgian Dream, which brazenly falsified the parliamentary elections right before everyone's eyes. And the only leader of the EU countries, Orban, arrived where he was, by the way, booed in Tbilisi, thank God. There are decent and honest people in Georgia, and there are many of them. But unfortunately, we see such scoundrels as Fico, Orban, and Siarta are simply cynically spitting in the faces of everyone, primarily their own citizens. Fico requested to attend the parade in Moscow, stating that it would be a great honor for him to come on May 9th. Accused Ukraine and appeared on a propaganda channel, and he was promised there that he would definitely receive an invitation to come to Moscow on May 9th. He criticized, just like Siarta, who also criticized the West, for anti-Russian sanctions and international support for Ukraine. Naturally, Fico was torn apart by his own opposition, particularly for his appearance on a Russian propaganda channel. Nevertheless, Fico is the first among the leaders of European Union countries to agree to participate in a television program on a Moscow propaganda channel. Even Orban did not stoop to such a level, which is strange. I must say as a compliment, even Orban did not stoop to such a level, but Fico did. The channel is Russia 1. Well, basically there is nothing more to say here. He also spoke out, as he said, against the policy of Russophobia, which is enforced at the international level and opposes a mandatory, singular viewpoint. This is how he speaks about the position of the international community, which condemned Russia's actions. And of course, the cherry on top is his desire to come to the parade in Moscow on May 9th. He said it would be an honor for him to be invited there. This is understandable. Unfortunately, it is a disgrace. This is terrible. All of this shows the state NATO is in right now. And this is a huge problem for the North Atlantic Alliance, the presence of two such countries. Also, last night in Ufa, drones attacked an industrial enterprise. The text refers to the Bashneft Ufa oil refinery. Earlier, the Financial Times reported, citing its sources, that negotiations are allegedly taking place in Qatar between Ukraine and Russia, with Ukraine not striking Russian oil refineries and Russia not targeting energy infrastructure. This was denied by the office of the President of Ukraine, and Peskov also denies this. Well, here we see the results. A response to the Financial Times publication. So there is actually no moratorium. That's the news we have for today, friends. Thank you for watching this video. Subscribe to the channel, like, share, and comment on the broadcast. Don't forget to recommend the video to friends and acquaintances. Take care of yourselves. Thank you to all the partners, friends, and sponsors of the channel. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Glory to the Ukrainian Special Forces. You were with Major of the Ukrainian Army, Taras Berezovets. Friends, until we meet again, goodbye.